Hi, my name's Tommy and I created Fabulous 103 FM about 10 years ago, when radio really was fun. And we're attempting against all odds to keep this situation and the news service running, despite running in the minus, month after month, thanks to COVID. We're not and never will be PC correct. There are no Karens here, and we tend to call a spade a spade. We refer to the variants by their places of origin, so happily agree that this is a coronavirus. It's Chinese-born, that variants were found in the UK and are called the English variant, and that the current most damaging variant originated in India. That's not racist. Despite comments from the woke brigade on our Facebook and on our YouTube page, it's the only way that the majority of people can associate variant with type, unless of course you studied Greek. We, like many businesses, are running on empty, and yet somehow we manage to keep going and maintain the team that keeps you up to date here early mornings before anyone else in the English language brings you an up-to-date report. The government over the weekend made it crystal clear that fake news, guesswork and invented tales designed to cause unwarranted distress is not only frowned on but will be acted on by the authorities. And in the same statement, reference was clearly made to foreign-made news. And rightly so. Ours is a small media company and licensed through the NBTC to broadcast on the FM here in Thailand, whereas internet websites and the like, they're not required to license. In fact, there is no license for them. For us, it's paramount that we adhere to our licensing regulations. That when cut-and-paste merchants are still in their beds or copying from one source to another, we're verifying the news that we broadcast independently to you and source from dozens of outlets, whilst having access to independent reports, both within Thailand and without. We balance one against the other. We take out opinion, wherever possible, and present the facts, and we do an awful lot of background checking before we do that. You see, we're required by law to record and keep all transmissions 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, for a period of time, in order that the authorities can call on us at any time to review our output, and they can. They're more than welcome. We also never delete from YouTube, so that what's said is said, done and dusted, and so has to be factually correct. Our content is never cut and pasted. We never simply supply you with copied content from other media sources, and our output is always original content, unless rarely we quote from a reliable source and then we give credit to it. And we know that you have the choice of browsing elsewhere for clickbait, the fake news and supposition. The facts, though, are often unpalatable and go against what some people believe, and we know that. We know that it would be nice in a real world, or in an ideal world, that we could give you news that is not COVID. And some days we manage that. We manage to squeeze it in, but most days there's too much going on in this country at the moment. We may not agree with your opinions, but everybody has an opinion and is entitled to it. We accept that. And that's why, unless abusive or unhinged, your comments remain on our YouTube channel. We may not agree with them, but they're your opinion, and often as much of interest to viewers as the news itself. They also give us an insight into what the general thought is in various arenas. On Friday, as an example, our coverage of the press conference by the CCSA took a while to produce. We edited and abridged it to cover the pertinent facts and avoid comment from ourselves completely, instead taking the words from the CCSA presenter, which in reality was the news anyway. We didn't preempt his statement or use the various guesswork garbage that was reported on a meeting that hadn't even concluded, as that would have misled our viewers and listeners. We have to say that often meanings are lost in translation, and it's our job then to highlight those anomalies and work with sources to establish the true meaning. Thai is a difficult language. In fact, it's a very difficult language to translate properly without manual intervention, as most programs and even many translators make horrendous mistakes. As an example, even if correctly translated, double negatives have a different meaning in Thai than they do in English. Prior to the press conference on Friday, no direct mention was made as to which areas of the country would be affected. No one knew until it was finally announced whether the effect would be nationwide or just to a handful of zones. And no one knew the extent of the regulations. But what you did see was some so-called media posting on the internet with guesswork. And the sad thing is that when one posts, another takes it as gospel and copies and pastes it. And before you know it, you have lemmings entering their final leap en masse. But by then, people believe what they read or hear, and you don't deserve that. What we believe is that you deserve the facts, fact-checked and informative, without bias, from which you can draw your own conclusions. Clearly, some are under the misconception that we're run by the BBC or the government. Now, neither of those is the case. None of our Thai local or national news is sourced by the BBC. It has nothing to do with the BBC. We're BBC World Service partners. That means that we can bring you, we're allowed to bring you the BBC World News and the BBC content that we have throughout the day. They have nothing to do with our local and national news. And despite the fact that we're licensed by the NBTC, the government to date has never inflicted any draconian control on our broadcasting or news. Perhaps because we don't do a bad job of it, or perhaps because what we report is correct. We often run news stories, as we will today, that conflict with what you might hear elsewhere. This isn't rebellion, nor is it fake news, but it happens when 2 or 3 conflicting stories are released to the media from any source or sources, which when combined don't make any sense. And sometimes we don't run particular reports because there's an element of doubt where the probability is that they're either erroneous or fake, regardless of the source. To date, in those cases, we've been proven to be right. Many have asked, what do I personally believe? Well, for what it's worth, we never thought the bars would open in July. That's a fact. In fact, I'd be surprised if they opened by October. The figures released daily, well, they're a guide as to the actual national status. They're days old, as tests have to be processed and then reported on. And until now, voluntary testing was unaccounted for. As until recently, if you thought you had COVID and went to have a test but showed no signs, then you weren't tested. Equally, the figures here, regardless of age or accuracy, do reflect the situation, the mass and perhaps the predictable spread. As an example, just 3 months ago, I was reporting to you of perhaps 110 cases daily. Whilst without doubt things could have been handled differently in some cases, I think that this government has been no less successful than others when at this stage of spread. A difficult time perhaps, but at this stage of spread in their countries, thinking of America, the UK, Europe or Australia, all were taken by surprise when numbers started to escalate. But that's an opinion. It's not necessarily a fact, and it will never appear in our news. What is a fact is that friends, colleagues and associates, both Thai and non-Thai, are suffering both financially and emotionally. And, as we've said before, we don't care if you believe that COVID is a cold or the plague, whether it's manipulated by rich religious families, a cult, the man in the moon or aliens. Mainly because A, it's your opinion, you're entitled to it, and B, it's actually totally irrelevant to the issue. Totally irrelevant. The main issue for all here is that it's an economic virus, a financial virus. It's destroying businesses, families and economies. And for that reason alone, not because of any pressure from any organisation, but for that reason alone, we'll always support anything that can shorten the shutdown times, reduce the COVID count and get everybody back on their feet again. We at Fabulous 103 FM truly hope that you'll stick with us, support us, and in time recover along with us from this mess and get back to whatever normal life is going to be. But one thing you won't get from us is cut and paste and fake news. Thank you for watching. Have a great day.